They say battles with the HOA start small. A petty rule, a minor complaint, a slip of paper. Mine began with a plain white envelope taped to my front door. No knock, no explanation. Just a bold headline in thick black font. Violation notice. Immediate action required. At first I laughed. Must be a mix-up, I thought. My yard was neat, my trash cans were hidden, my mailbox matched regulation beige like everyone else's. There was nothing to find me for. Then I opened it. Greater than parking in unauthorized area, $500 fine. Repeat violation may incur additional charges. My eyes froze on the words. Unauthorized area. It was my driveway, my own slab of concrete, poured with my own money attached to my own house. Where else was I supposed to park? I flipped through the HOA handbook that night, page by page, hunting for the rule I'd supposedly broken. Nowhere, not a single line, did it forbid parking in your own driveway. So why me? The next morning, another envelope was waiting. Same bold letters, same smug language. But the number was different. Not $500, $1,000. No appeal process, no explanation. Just a doubling fine. By the third day, I'd had enough. I stormed into the HOA office, letter in hand. Behind the desk sat Karen Whitfield, the infamous president of our board. Her hair was sharp, her voice sharper. I slapped the notice down. This is a mistake. There's no rule against parking in my driveway. Karen didn't even blink. She adjusted her glasses, eyes flicking to the paper. Then she looked up at me with a smile that wasn't a smile at all. Rules evolve, she said smoothly. The board has discretion. Consider this a warning. Warning? You're stealing money. This says $1,000. She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a hiss. Pay the fine, or things will get worse. The way she said it, like she enjoyed it, sent a chill through me. I walked out shaking with fury. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds as I passed, their faces unreadable. Nobody came out. Nobody spoke. That silence was louder than words. Maybe I wasn't the first. Maybe I was just the next target. By the end of the week, 3 more envelopes arrived. $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. Each one stamped in screaming red ink. Final warning. I tried everything. I called the number listed, voicemail, no return. I emailed, no reply. I even went back to the office only to be told Karen was unavailable. Every door I knocked on slammed shut in my face. It wasn't a system, it was a trap. The pressure built fast. My wife asked what we were supposed to do. My kids whispered at the dinner table, scared because they'd overheard us talking about losing the house. And then came the letter that nearly stopped my heart. This time it wasn't folded neatly. It was thick, stapled, official-looking, like a death sentence. Outstanding balance, $50,000. Failure to pay will result in foreclosure proceedings, $50,000 for parking in my own driveway. I read it 3 times before the number sank in. $50,000, more than half my annual salary. A number that would ruin us, bankrupt us, strip everything away. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the stack of notices spread like a deck of cards. Every one of them was stamped in red, shouting louder than my thoughts. My wife sat across from me, her face pale. "What are we going to do?" she asked. I didn't answer, because the truth was I didn't know. Outside, I could see neighbors walking their dogs, pretending not to glance at my house. Some of them knew. Some of them probably thought I deserved it. That's how the HOA worked. Divide, isolate, control. But as I stared at that $50,000 figure, a new thought cut through the fear. They wanted me scared. They wanted me to fold, to pay, to disappear quietly. I wasn't going to. If they thought they could take everything I owned with a stack of paper and a smirk, they had no idea who they were dealing with, because I was done being quiet. and I was ready to fight back. The $50,000 letter wasn't a warning. It was a declaration of war. I stared at the notice until the numbers blurred. They wanted me broken, desperate, begging for mercy. Instead, something hardened inside me. The next day, another envelope arrived. Not just taped to my door, this one shoved into my mailbox as if to remind me they owned even that. The balance had grown. Penalties. Administrative fees. Interest. They were piling weight on my chest, one paper at a time. I refused to pay. That's when the harassment started. One morning, I found a bright orange sticker plastered across my garage door. Delinquent account. The letters screamed across the street, visible to every neighbor driving by. By evening, whispers spread like wildfire. Some neighbors avoided eye contact. Others smirked as if enjoying the spectacle. The HOA didn't just want my money, they wanted my reputation. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, watching headlights pass, waiting for the next strike. It came sooner than I thought. A loud knock shook the front door. When I opened it, two men in suits stood there. Not police, not sheriffs, just HOA enforcers carrying clipboards. "Sir," one said flatly, "you've ignored multiple notices. Unless you settle the balance immediately, foreclosure proceedings will begin." I almost laughed. Foreclosure? For parking in my driveway? The man didn't flinch. "Rules are rules. You signed the agreement. When you bought this house, I slammed the door before they could finish." My hands trembled, not from fear, but rage. The fines weren't slowing down. They were accelerating. The HOA system was designed like quicksand. The more you resisted, the deeper you sank. Within days, the total balance ballooned past $60,000. Every morning, a new notice appeared. Every evening, another threat. Phone calls rang from blocked numbers. Emails arrived with subject lines like, "Final demand," and "Pay or lose your home." But the breaking point wasn't the money. It was what they did to my family. My kids came home from school, eyes wide, holding flyers some neighbor had handed them. On it, in bold red letters, "Delinquent homeowner, bad neighbor." My name, my address, printed for the world to see. I saw the fear in my wife's eyes when she read it. They weren't just after me, they were humiliating my family. I couldn't let it go on. That weekend, I walked into the HOA board meeting. The room was packed, residents in folding chairs, board members at a long table, and Karen in the center, smirking like she'd already won. I held up the latest notice. $50,000 for parking in my own driveway. Show me the rule. Right now. Page and line. The room went silent. Karen leaned back in her chair, her voice dripping with condescension. "You agreed to abide by the board's authority. We don't need to explain ourselves to you." Gas rippled through the audience. Even some board members shifted uncomfortably, but Karen pressed on. "If you don't like it, sell your house and leave. We'll take the fine from the sale anyway." Her arrogance was suffocating. She believed she was untouchable. I left the meeting with only one thought. This wasn't about a driveway. It was about power. And if she thought I was powerless, she was about to learn how wrong she was. The night after the board meeting, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by notices, red stamps, bold threats, outrageous numbers. My wife begged me to pay something, anything, just to make it stop. But I couldn't. Giving in meant admitting they owned me. I needed proof. Proof that the HOA was lying. I pulled out the HOA handbook again. Page after page, dense rules about fence colors, mailbox sizes, lawn height. Nothing about driveways. Not one word. That was my opening. The next morning, I called an attorney. He listened quietly as I explained everything, then asked for copies of the letters. When I dropped off the stack, he flipped through them, shaking his head. "This isn't enforcement," he said. "It's extortion. If what you're telling me is true, they don't have a leg to stand on." His words lit a fire inside me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. But the HOA didn't slow down. They doubled down. A new notice arrived. Foreclosure proceedings initiated. My stomach dropped. They were trying to take my home. I checked the security cameras I had installed months earlier. I scrolled back through the footage, desperate for anything. That's when I saw it. Karen herself, late at night, walking up my driveway and taping the first violation notice to my door. She looked straight into the camera before walking away, a smug smile on her face. It wasn't just harassment, it was personal. I saved the footage, copied it to multiple drives, and handed it to my lawyer. His eyes widened. This changes everything. Meanwhile, the pressure at home grew unbearable. My kids whispered at dinner, asking if we'd have to move. My wife cried quietly in the bedroom when she thought I wasn't listening. The HOA wanted us to break, but all they did was push me closer to the edge. I started digging deeper. I spoke to neighbors in hushed tones, behind closed doors. Stories spilled out, secret fines, bogus violations, threats of foreclosure. One family had already sold their house and left town. Another was still fighting in court. The pattern was clear. Karen used the HOA like a weapon. Anyone who stood up to her was crushed. But she'd made one mistake. She'd picked the wrong person this time. I gathered everything: letters, emails, security footage, neighbor testimonies. Piece by piece, the case was building. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, rehearsing what I'd say in court. Karen's smug voice echoed in my head. Rules evolve. We don't need to explain ourselves. She thought she was untouchable, but soon she was going to answer for everything. The breaking point had arrived. I wasn't just defending my driveway anymore. I was fighting for my home, my family, and every neighbor she had ever bullied. The next letter I planned to send wouldn't be a check. It would be a lawsuit. The courthouse smelled of old paper and fear. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my lawyer beside me, a folder of evidence between us. Across the aisle, Karen sat with her attorney, chin high, eyes narrowed. She looked like someone who'd never lost. The judge entered. Everyone rose. My heart hammered. This was it. The fight for my home, my family, my life. Karen's lawyer started first. He painted me as a defiant homeowner, a rule breaker who thought he was above the community. Mr. Hey, he sneered, refused to comply with HOA regulations. He ignored repeated warnings, leaving the board no choice but to impose penalties. I clenched my fists. Lies. All lies. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood, calm but sharp. Your Honor, the HOA claims my client violated a rule. Yet not once have they produced a written policy stating that parking in one's own driveway is prohibited. He held up the handbook. The rule doesn't exist. The judge leaned forward. Is this true? He asked Karen's lawyer. The man fumbled. Karen whispered furiously in his ear. But he had nothing. No page, no line, no evidence. That's when my lawyer revealed the footage. The courtroom screen flickered to life, showing Karen herself sneaking up to my door late at night, slapping the first notice on it, then turning to the camera with that smug smile. Gasps filled the room. This wasn't enforcement, my lawyer continued. This was targeted harassment. A personal vendetta carried out under the guise of authority. Karen's face turned red. She slammed her hand on the table. He's lying. He's twisting everything. We have the right. The judge silenced her with a sharp bang of the gavel. Sit down, Ms. Whitfield. One by one, neighbors I had spoken to stepped forward. They testified about their own bogus fines, threats of foreclosure, and Karen's intimidation tactics. The pattern was undeniable. By the time the last witness spoke, the courtroom atmosphere had shifted completely. The board members who sat behind Karen looked pale, some even ashamed. My lawyer closed with a single line. This case isn't about rules. It's about power, and it's time that power was taken back. Silence hung heavy as the judge shuffled papers, then finally spoke. The evidence is overwhelming. The fines imposed were baseless. The actions of the HOA president were abusive, and foreclosure proceedings are hereby dismissed. The HOA will cancel all charges against the plaintiff, and this court recommends a full audit of the association's practices. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. Karen slumped in her chair, her perfect composure shattered. The look on her face wasn't anger anymore. It was fear. The battle was over, but the war against the HOA had only just begun. When the gavel struck, it was like a thunderclap. The courtroom emptied fast, whispers chasing Karen as she stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots against the tile. For the first time, she didn't look untouchable. She looked cornered. The news spread through the neighborhood by nightfall. HOA loses in court, the headlines read. Neighbors who had once avoided me now stopped at my driveway to shake my hand. Some whispered thanks. Others confessed stories of their own. Threats, bogus fines, harassment they'd been too scared to fight. Karen's power unraveled quickly. An emergency HOA meeting was called. Residents demanded her resignation. Under pressure, she tried to cling to her chair, but the board turned against her. By the end of the week, she was gone. But her departure didn't erase the damage. The HOA faced an official audit. Thousands of dollars in fraudulent fines were uncovered. Families who had been forced out were contacted. Lawsuits piled up. The system she had built to control us was collapsing piece by piece. As for me, the foreclosure threat vanished overnight. The $50,000 fine was canceled. My record cleared. On paper, I was free. But freedom didn't feel simple. Every time I walked up my driveway, I remembered the letters, the threats, the late-night knocks. My kids still asked if someone might try to take our house again. My wife still double-checked the mailbox like it was a trap. The scars were real. One evening, as I sat on the porch, a neighbor approached. He was an older man I'd barely spoken to before. He looked me in the eye and said, "You didn't just fight for yourself. You fought for all of us." Then he walked away, leaving me with the weight of his words. Maybe that was true. Maybe my battle was bigger than one driveway, one house, one family. The HOA had tried to bury me under $50,000 of lies. Instead, they'd exposed themselves. And as I watched Karen's for sale sign go up in front of her house, I realized something. This wasn't just the end of her reign. It was the beginning of mine. Because once you've stood up to the tyrants hiding behind HOA rules, you never bow again.